Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, All Things Middle-earth here, and today we're talking about two Tier 2 legendary support commanders, Gandalf the Grey and Falgin. We're going to compare them in 4 categories and see which commander I think is better to use as a support, or maybe they're equal and you should use both. That's what I'm doing right here actually, but I want to hear what you guys think on these guys. I think they're both fantastic, and again, we're going to rank them in 4 categories: free-to-play friendliness, effectiveness as a support, relic usefulness, and troop flexibility. So I'm going to tell you how they rank in those categories and which one, if you're choosing one, I think you should go after. Now, before jumping into the actual video, this is my top-up link. It's linked in the description below if you are spending in Rise to War currently. If you use this link, it does support the channel. It can be cheaper for you depending on where you're at in the world. If you're in a different country other than the US, it's actually cheaper in a lot of other countries. So check it out if you're not in the US. But the big thing is, the reason I'm promoting it, it does support the channel, which helps me continue making content like this. So consider using it if you're not already. If you're not spending, obviously it doesn't apply. No worries. Hit that subscribe button and like the video as well, because that does help the channel as well. But that's enough of the intro. Let's go ahead and roll the actual intro and get into the video. Okay, starting out in no particular order, we're going to start with Falgin, look through his entire build, then we'll do Gandalf, and then we'll rank them in those categories we talked about so you can know which one is better to use, or maybe they're equal. Now, first off, for Falgin, he's going to need his R5 Thrain's Guard, which says damage taken from 3 allied dwarf formations on the first 6 hits, negative 30%. At level 5, this is going to increase to the first 8 instances of damage, and it's going to be modified by the commander's defense stats. So the higher the commander's defense, the more this is going to reduce damage. So very, very good. And that tells us what kind of gear we're looking for Falgin. The other thing we're going to run is the Arid Luin Expedition. It says for each type of dwarf formation unit in your army, defense of the commander's formation +7 up to 2 stacks. At level 5, it stacks 3 times, so up to 21 extra defense for those units, and an extra 2 HP for the units at the level 10. Now, if you have any extra points, I'd put just a few points into Durance Blood. Just get a little bit of damage from him. It's not really going to be a whole lot, but I think it's better than nothing. I don't like Musician because it's a heal. If you happen to have a high respect Falgin, you could go and do 5 out of 10 points here for the debuff Purify there, but most people probably don't have him that high or really need to push him that high, so I just put the extra couple points into Durance Blood. Now, like we saw, we're going to look for commander defense, so every piece of gear needs to, if possible, have something with commander defense, and I'll put the sheet up on the screen. I made a sheet for both Falgin and Gandalf here. Those will be linked down below if you want to look at them. But what you see here is the, at least in the top row, the best in slot commander defense items. The next row is the second best in slot for gold items. And the third row is going to be your purple items, the best in slot purple for commander defense. Now, as far as sets goes, we really want to make a thick armor set for Falgin. This is going to boost his defense even more, meaning more damage reduction for him, especially if you have less, gold gear. If you're running greens or blues or even some purples, that extra 20 here is going to make a big difference. Now, it still makes a big difference with your golds, because as you can see here, I have a Hammer of Moria. It's the best commander defense. I have it strengthened 3 times, but this extra thick armor is almost the exact same that I'm getting from the entire item. So it's very, very good, and I would try to run it if possible. Again, I wouldn't use bad gear or gear that doesn't have commander defense, but it's worth considering like the best 1 through 3 items of golds and even of purples to see if you can make a thick armor set, because that extra 20, again, that 20 is more than the entire Brutal Helm fully strengthened. So do the math, see how much the 20 is giving you, and if you can run it, I would try to, as long as it doesn't give you less by running worse gear. Next up, we're going to look at Falgin's Relic. Falgin has a really cool relic outside of the commander stats, which are great because we really want to try and roll commander defense, which is very RNG based. If you guys didn't know, you strengthen up these relics and it's going to give you a random one of these stats. It's not all of them. So you don't have a guarantee to get commander defense, is what he wants. But if you do get commander defense on his relic being strengthened, it's very, very good. And people have gotten like high 90% reduction from his R5 with his relic and good rolls on the strengthening. So the stats are great by itself, but the effect we're going to look at is also very good. It says reduces damage received by this formation's melee units by 6%. So more damage reduction, 6%, that's great. It's going to increase damage dealt by this formation's ranged units by 6, which we don't care about as much, although you can get creative with your troops and try to do stuff with that. But we're getting 6% here. And then it says the above effect gains 6% for each allied dwarf unit present, stacks up to 3 times. So we can get an extra 18% more on top of the 6 for all the dwarves we have present. So we're going to run dwarves on everyone in the army, and we're going to get even more damage reduction with this hardy buckler. So the relic absolutely gets passed. It's a great relic. Honestly, could be a great first relic depending on who you're trying to go for, but it's a fantastic piece that I would definitely recommend getting. Now, as far as units go, we're going to suggest the Guardians. Falgin does have to run dwarves. He cannot be flexible in that sense. You could run different types of dwarves, and if you have the relic and you want to try using something like master throwers to put more damage out with them, that could definitely be an option. But for the most part, I think it's just simple to run the bulky, tanky Guardians and not worry about putting out damage. Let your damage dealers do the damage. Let Falgin do the tanking. Now on to Gandalf the Grey. Now, Gandalf the Grey has a fantastic support ability called White Council. Gandalf the White also shares this ability, but it's called White Council. And for 4 allied formations, everybody on the field, they're going to receive negative 18% damage or take 18% less damage from the first up to 7 instances of damage. And this is modified by focus. So we want to add as much focus as possible to Gandalf. Now for his next point, I'm going to suggest going into Wizard, but it's going to be between Wizard and Mithrandir, depending on the gear you have and depending on the troops you have available. It's not going to be the end all be all, but I'll explain in a second why that can matter. But the quick reference for me is just White Council followed by Wizard with extra points in Mithrandir. Don't go into the Gray. Don't try the heal. It's not good. The big thing is White Council, but I'll explain more why this can change depending on the gear you have available. So speaking of gear, as you can see here on the screen, these are the best in slot focus items in the game. We have the first and second best options for gold, as well as the best option for purple, just so you can see what those items look like. But again, whatever it is, greens, blues, purples, as long as it has focus, that's going to be the big thing for Gandalf the Grey. In the skill kind of choice, I was talking about whether or not you go with Wizard, because Wizard's going to deal damage, and Mithrandir boosts damage for troops, or it gives them a chance to attack twice. Which I don't love unit stuff. That's why I'm not a huge fan of it. But if you have better gear on your Gandalf that has higher focus and has some commander damage, if you're running like gold gear, I think running his R5 makes more sense because you're really boosting that a lot more. However, if you're just getting started, or maybe the gear you have just doesn't have the commander damage, whatever it is, I think then you might get more usefulness out of Mithrandir. So he can be run a lot of different ways, and it can also depend on what troops you have available. So if you have a really cool tier 4 troop that does a lot of damage, and you want them attacking multiple times, you could put them with Gandalf and have that happen. So it's a little bit different. You have some choice, but when in doubt, follow the sheet. The priority is going to be White Council, followed by Wizard, then Mithrandir, but you can switch those last two depending on your situation. Now, as far as set effects for Gandalf the Grey, we're going to look for agility. The big thing is here, we don't want the White Council ability to be stolen by enemy Saurons. So the higher the agility for Gandalf, he's actually slower than Falgin is at base value as well. So Gandalf the Grey is slow. You want to boost his agility as much as possible so that doesn't get stolen. Otherwise, things like Divide and Conquer and Fortitude are great, just defensive all-around abilities. Now, I didn't say it because I think Thick Armor is the best play for Falgin, but technically you could run agility on him as well. If you happen to have good commander defense gear with agility, I think that's fine. Most people are running their agility stuff on Gandalf the Grey, Gandalf the White, or Sauron. So the fact that Falgin can use Thick Armor so well, I think it makes sense to let him do that and let the other guys that want agility fight over that. So I'd still go with Thick Armor, but if you are wondering why he wouldn't also want agility to protect his buffs, which he still does, I think it's just because there are other bigger priorities because he benefits so much from Thick Armor. Whereas Gandalf the Grey, he doesn't really have another one he benefits from as much as Falgin benefits from Thick Armor. Now, as far as the relic goes for Gandalf the Grey, it is Glamdring here. Again, base stats are fine. If you roll focus, that's great. The effect is Leader of the Free Folk. It's very simple. It's just a straight percent damage reduction. At max refinement, you're going to get negative 12% damage received by the commander's formation, which is very good. Again, I don't think it's quite as good as Falgin's, but I do think it's a decent one. I will give it a pass, but this would probably be a relic that I would get after I've got my first couple that I'm really investing in over time. But if you love Gandalf, whatever it is, I think it's still a really good one, and it's just a very simple, good reduction of damage, and this added in with White Council is fantastic. Now, units for Gandalf the Grey are also going to be suggested as Guardians, but the difference is Gandalf the Grey can run whatever. Now, I like Guardians. I think they're tanky. I think they're bulky, but if you happen to want to run all Eagles or Fell Beast on him, or maybe some tier 4 troop that you have, depending on your faction, or maybe a ranged troop that's going to do more damage with the follow-up, he's got options. So I will still suggest Guardians. I always suggest the just cheap, cost-effective, bulky troops, but Gandalf the Grey has some choices. So if you don't want to be locked into a certain troop type, I would definitely suggest Gandalf a little more in terms of the troop conversation. And there you have it. There is the breakdown for Falgin and Gandalf the Grey. Now, which one is better? I want to hear what you guys think because I think it's very, very close. If we rank these 4 categories, again, looking at their free-to-play friendliness, their effectiveness as a support, their relic usefulness, and the troop flexibility. First of all, starting out with free-to-play friendliness, I'm going to give it to Gandalf because Gandalf, you can get White Council at respect 3. So you need 2 less respect to run his main skill than you need for Falgin, who needs to be R5. It's not a huge deal, and don't let it divert you if you're a free-to-play player, but Gandalf gets the edge just slightly, being a little bit more accessible at Respect 3. Now, as far as effectiveness as a support goes, I have a report pulled up. This is just from sweeping, but here you can see with the gear I have on, which is very equal in terms of what we're boosting, I'll show in a second. Gandalf the Grey, the White Council is going to give Guardians negative 42.6 damage received, and Falgin, Thrain's Guard, gives Guardian negative 53.6. So Falcon's going to get the edge here just slightly as far as effectiveness. And I'll show you my gear just so you guys can kind of see I'm not kind of running way better on one or the other. But again, this is the gear we have on our Falcon right here. And it is boosting his commander defense by 92. That's the bonus right there, is 92. He has a base of 45. Now for Gandalf the Grey, we're boosting him by 84. So there's an 8-point difference, which again, I could strengthen something and give him a few more points to really see. It's going to be very, very close. But I do think Falgin just slightly gets the edge in terms of his effectiveness. Now, as far as the relic goes, like I kind of already said, I do think Falgin has a better relic. I think Falgin would be a good first choice relic for a new player, especially free to play or low spender. It just has, I think, a little bit more it does for Falgin's kit, a little bit more damage reduction when refined, all that good stuff. So I definitely would suggest the Hardy Buckler. Gandalf's Glamping is not bad, but I think out of the two, the Hardy Buckler gets the point. And lastly, the troop flexibility. While they can both, and I would suggest they both run Guardians, Gandalf the Grey can really run whoever he wants. And if troops ever get a buff in the future and there are good damage troops out, Gandalf the Grey is going to get a lot better. I'm not saying that's going to happen or to worry about it, but I do think right now Falgin is locked into using dwarves and you really want him to be tanky. So he has less troop flexibility, which might not matter at all to you, and it might matter a lot to you. So just kind of pointing that out, that Gandalf the Grey can really use whoever. He can be plugged into any lineup, whereas Falgin needs to run a specific type of troop. And there you have it. We're tied up. It's 2-2. Honestly, I didn't know that was going to happen. So let me know what you guys think. Who do you like more as a support, or do you run them both? I think they're both pretty freaking good. So let me know who you guys like between these guys. But that'll do it for this video. And if you want to see more comparison videos like this, where we compare two supports or two damage dealers, whatever, comment down below who you think we should cover next. Everything we talked about in the video, the sheets, the cheat sheets for the guides and the gear and all that, those are linked down below as well. So check those out if you like. Share them with your team, whatever helps. But that'll do it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.